We're good.
Hey.
There we go. Go ahead, Will.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Peace and Possibility, Part 1 with Maoz Inon. My name is Will Braun. I'm editor of Canadian Mennonite magazine, and I'm at my home office in near Morden, Manitoba, on the Canadian prairies, 8 miles north of North Dakota for the Americans tuning in. I welcome you on behalf of Canadian Mennonite Magazine, Anabaptist World, Christian Courier, and the Mennonite Church Canada Palestine Israel Network, the joint sponsors. And to set the tone, I want to read a few words of Jonah from the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament. God sent Jonah to Nineveh, of course, to tell them that God was mad at them. Vengeance was coming. And Jonah, of course, had a rough ride getting there. But when he got there and he proclaimed his message of the coming wrath, the people of Nineveh repented and God relented and Jonah became angry because that's not the ending he wanted. He wanted to see the vengeance and the violence. So he explains to God why he didn't want to go to Nineveh in the first place. So he says, "For I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and ready to relent from punishing." It's not easy to accept that God is slow to anger and ready to relent from punishing. May God nurture that capacity within us and within our world to relent from a desire for vengeance. And may God bless our time together. And may God bless our guest, Maoz. Over to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Will. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Danielle Klatz. I get to be the executive director of Anabaptist World. We are excited to be together with a Canadian Mennonite and Maoz, and just eager to hear our presentation today. Thank you for being with us. I will be sort of more on the back end today, and so I will be looking at the chat. Please, anytime you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat, whether you are joining us via YouTube or Facebook, and I will go ahead and add this right here. And hopefully that's easy for you to see. Thank you. And there will be a question and answer time near the end. So feel free to put it in the chat. I will try to keep track of them. And at the end, I'll go ahead and be that voice to ask questions near the end. So that's it for me.
Great. Thanks to Danielle, Anabaptist World, for doing the tech hosting. We're going to keep this to 60 minutes today, and a recording of this event will be available after the event at the same link that you're at now. This event is jointly sponsored by Canadian Mennonite, Anabaptist World, Christian Courier, sister publication I appreciate a great deal. Welcome to all the Christian Reformed folks tuning in. And also by Mennonite Church Canada, Palestine Israel Network, folks with long-standing ties to the Holy Land. And near the end, we'll also hear briefly from Mennonite Action. Danielle, do you want to just say a word about there's two parts to this Peace and Possibility, little pairing of events. Do you want to say a little bit about the second one before we get going here?
Yeah. So we're so glad. I can already see we have 305 people joining us today, which is awesome. We're so happy for all of you to be here. And there is a second event that will be February 28th. So next week, this one will be later in the evening. It will be 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And that second part is titled The Wall Between. Here, the co-authors of The Wall Between, What Jews and Palestinians Don't Want to Know About Each Other. And we will be joined by Raja Khouri and a Palestinian Canadian, and Jeffrey Wilkinson, an American Jew, as they navigate the clash of narratives with candor, skill, and grace. So we just want to welcome you again today and invite you to join us next week as well in our second part. That's it.
I have to say that book, The Wall Between, has really astounded me. It's stretching my mind and my heart in the best possible way. Like they examine fundamentally different perspectives on the Holocaust and Nakba, Zionism, anti-Semitism with a degree of rigor and honesty that's quite something. So great book. Looking forward to that. But we are here today to hear from Maoz Inon. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then we'll sort of proceed in a somewhat informal interview kind of style. Maoz was born in Kibbutz Niram in the northwestern Negev. When he was 14, his family moved to Netiv Hasara, next to the Israeli border with Gaza. In the early 2000s, a hiking trip abroad inspired Maoz to improve hiking and tourism opportunities in Israel and the Middle East. In 2005, he set up the Fazi Azar Inn, a guest house in the old city of Nazareth, in partnership with a local Arab family, the Azar family. The guest house has served as something of a catalyst for the rejuvenation of a troubled part of the city of Nazareth, and it sparked a much-needed resurgence of the local economy. Part of the vision for the guest house was that it be a place for cross-cultural dialogue and learning, and the inn received the World Responsible Tourism Award in 2011. Maoz's subsequent ventures as a social entrepreneur include Abraham Hostels and the Jesus Trail, a 65-kilometer hiking trail in the Galilee region. His ventures have won awards and even attracted former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Along the way, he seems to have crossed paths with various Mennonites, as can happen. And a shout out here to Michael Hostetler of Kitchener, Ontario, for putting me in touch with Maoz. On October 7th, 2023, Maoz's parents, Bilha and Yaakov Inon, were killed by Hamas at their home in Netiv Hasara. Since then, Maoz has spoken compellingly about peace, sharing his message on the BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, and now Canadian Mennonite Anabaptist World and Christian Courier. That's the company we keep. Maoz is married and the father of 3 children. He lives in Binyamina in northwestern Israel. Maoz, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Daniel. It's a real pleasure, honor to be here with you.
To start with, I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about growing up on the kibbutz.
I wonder if it's okay to start with something more personal, because I'm feeling, like you mentioned, I'm feeling connected in so many ways to the Mennonite community. It was Michael that you mentioned, and Lynn von Stutzman, and of course, my great friend and partner, David Landis, and his wife, Anna, that were among the first supporters and believer in my dream of bringing life back to the old city of Nazareth, and of course, in the development of the Jesus Trail. That I wasn't been able to do without the partnering with David and Anna. And I'm feeling very much connected to the Mennonite communities. So I would like to open with a vision I've seen on 3 nights after my parents were murdered. And I woke up at night, my entire body was aching with pain that I've never experienced before. I woke up crying, and through my tears, I could see the entire humanity, all mankind were crying. We were all crying, Israelis and Palestinians, between the river and the sea, and in the entire world, we were crying. And then I could see the tears falling on our body, and our body was wounded from the war, from so many wars we've been waging on each other. And our tears washed our body and healed the wounds. It was a miracle that our body became whole again and cured. And then I looked on the ground, and the ground was red from blood. It was totally red, and blood was on the ground. And then our tears, after healing our bodies, washed the ground, and they pured the ground. And then I could see through my tears the beautiful ground, and I could see the path of peace. And this is a vision I've seen 3 days after my parents were murdered. and I wanted to share it with you. Your tears and your support in us, in Israelis and Palestinian nowadays are matter, and they are making a difference. So this is why it was really so important for me to be here and speak to you today. So I'm really thank you for that. Yes, and now we can continue. I just wanted to share it with you. It's very personal, as you can hear, but it's something I wanted to share it with you.
Yes, thanks so much. I mean, you've shared so deeply with us already and with the world of some very intimate parts of your life, and I just want to acknowledge and honor that. Yeah, I don't know. Can we step back? Can you give us a bit
Yes.
a bit more context?
Sure.
And we'll come around again, of course, to
Sure.
to October 7th.
Definitely. So, and then Daniel, maybe you can open the map that I shared before, the link. So my both grandparents were Zionist pioneers, immigrating on their youth to Palestine under the British mandate. And they formed and founded two kibbutz community in the Negev. Kibbutz Niram, just kilometer and a half from the Gaza border, and Kibbutz Ruhama, by my mother parents, about 10 kilometers from there. And they were, it was still under the British mandate. And there were pioneers who actually founded the state of Israel in the age of 1948. My both parents were born in those kibbutzim, and when they got married, they moved to live with my father at my father kibbutz, Niram, just off maybe 1 mile from the Gaza border, where my two eldest sisters were born, myself, my youngest sister, and my young brother. At the age of 14, we moved to Netiv Asara, just on the northern border of Gaza. And that's where my parents live for the last 30-something years. My mom was an artist. She was doing art from trash and from recycled materials back in the 80s, before it became a world trend. And I always remember, like, while during the summers, she would ask us to collect all the ice cream stick, the wooden ice cream stick. And at the end of the summer, she would sit us around the table, and she would ask us, yes, so Kibbutz Niram, Kibbutz Niram, I don't know if you can see me, it's just on the northern eastern part of the border, near Sderot, and Netiv Asara just on the line, the northern line of the Gaza Strip. And at the end of the summer, my mom would ask us to paint over the ice cream stick, and then she framed it. She glued it on a board and framed it. It was hanged on the wall till October the 7th. And in the last 12 years, she was painting mandala and teaching groups how to paint mandala. It's the circle painting. And my father was a farmer, very, very talented one, who cultivated not just the land and the crops and the wheat, but he also cultivated other farmers. And it's very difficult to be a farmer in the Negev. It's very, very difficult. And I remember as a small child, like at the end of each season and each year, it doesn't matter if there was a drought or a flood or insects, or no one would want to buy the wheat because the price collapsed. He would each year he will tell us, next year I'm gonna sow wheat again, because next year is gonna be better. I'm gonna buy the best seeds. I'm gonna fertile the land. I will do everything just perfect, and then I will wait for nature to do his part, but I will do everything that is in my part that will be just as best as I can. So it was amazing growing up in this area. And then after doing my military service, which is taking 3 years for all Jewish Israelis, is a mandatory from the age 18 to 21. And that's where I met Shlomit, my wife and partner, for the last 28 years. We went, like many, many young Israelis, we went backpacking in New Zealand, Australia, and Nepal for a year. And then we got back to Israel and to Tel Aviv, where my wife Shtomit studied and graduated electronic engineering, and I was working in some in the private sector, and then in the year 2004, nearly reaching our 30th, we've decided to go travel again before starting our real adult life, and we've decided this time to travel in Israel. So for nearly 50 days, we hiked the Israel National Trail, Shvil Israel. And it was the first time that we realized that we are living in the land of the Bible. We take that for granted. It was amazing to walk through the sites of where the Israeli prophets were, where the Israeli kings and Roman emperor, and I forgot Alexander the Great, and then so many great figures, of course, the Holy Family, and the Prophet Muhammad, and the Crusaders, and Salah ad-Din, the Muslim conquered, and Napoleon Bonaparte. It was just amazing to walk in this land, to see those events and those figures alive in our mind, and also walk through Jewish and Arab communities, big cities and small villages. And then we start saying we must build a network of hostels along the Israel National Trail, Shvil Israel. And we also we realized there is no information in English about the trail, so we start writing a very detailed blog. That's where how I met David Landis and his friend Eric before they wanted to come and hike the Israel National Trail after being here as students with Eastern Mennonite University. That's how we became friends, through this information that I wrote online. And after hiking the Israel National Trail in spring 2004, that's where we went travel again in California and South America.
I wonder if I could just ask you to jump back a wee bit to your growing up years. Maybe I should have interrupted when you were talking about that. You grew up so close, and I want to ask you a bit more about the business ventures as well, but you grew up so close to Gaza. Was there any, did you know Palestinians? Did people mix across the border?
So when I grew up, it was like a barber, like a very, very basic fence, like you can find in farms, which military command car would pass by once an hour or maybe once half a day. You could cross by foot, basically. So we went by fixing the car and buying bicycles and going to the beach. And there were many Palestinians from Gaza working in the kibbutz, in the fields and in the factory and in construction. So it was just the neighbors around the corner with a lot of relationship. And those relationships basically fell apart, and they became a huge gap as time passed, and mostly after the first Intifada of the year 87, where the fence and the border and then the wall become more a massive one, and you couldn't enter or exit, but definitely not with Israeli ID or not through the checkpoints. And it basically blocked completely on the second Intifada. And after the Hamas got in power, I think it was in the year of 2006, with the Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza and the evacuation of the Jewish Israeli settlements in Gaza in the year of 2005. And then basically it's got blocked completely. So it was impossible to make any connection or contact.
Thanks. Do you want to say more about the business ventures, the tourism ventures that you've been part of, your vision for that? What excites you most about that work?
So what it came from our backpacking experience in the world, and mostly in South America, where after staying in visiting a rural community in Ecuador of indigenous community, and we arrived there as backpackers. And then the first night we had dinner with a local family and learned about their lifestyle and their culture and their heritage. And the day after, that the son of the family took us on a dirt llama path to see a lake within a volcano crater. And the third day in this rural community of maybe just 60 families, we went through the houses and we bought fabrics and local cheese and just chat with the local community. And we have seen a sign on the school wall that they are looking for volunteers to help the youth train in computers and English and learn Spanish in return. So we stayed in this community for a week, and then we saw how many families stay, and hiking tours and rafting tours that you can take from the local community. And it was amazing to see how tourism empowering the local community, how it allowing them to keep their culture, save their heritage, lifestyle, and at the same time make a living in a very honorable way. And we say this is a beautiful business concept. How the main beneficiaries of the tourism industry is the local community. And we say we want to do the same in Israel. We want to open a community-based guest house along the Israel National Trail to support independent foreigner travelers. And we also said, how can it be that while traveling around the world, we learned about the Maori in New Zealand, about the Aboriginal in Australia, about the Sherpa in Nepal, about the indigenous communities in South America, but we didn't know anything about the indigenous people of Israel, about the Palestinian. We had no Palestinian friends. We didn't know the difference between Ramadan, which is starting soon, the Eid al-Fitr and the Eid al-Adha, and we didn't know where Jesus was born, where he's buried, and where he was announced. So we said to ourselves, Shlomit and I, let's open a guest house in a Palestinian community. So we will be able to learn about the lifestyle, about the culture, about the heritage, and we'll use tourism as a way to bridge between those gapping communities that we were part of one, that might be just a mile away, but totally different universe. And this is how we came with the vision of making Nazareth into the backpacker hub of the Middle East, reviving the old city of Nazareth through tourism, through backpackers, independent travelers, and small groups that will come and stay overnight in the old city of Nazareth, which back in 2005 was unthinkable, was just insane, because not only Jewish or foreigner were afraid to stay overnight in the old city of Nazareth, local people from Nazareth were afraid, because the reputation of the old city was as a community or a neighborhood that was known for drug dealers, for crime, and for violence. And when we told people from Nazareth that we intend or want to open a guest house in the old city of Nazareth, which is a beautiful old city, just amazing. It's so easy to fall in love with the city. They thought we are crazy. They told us we're afraid to walk there. So what make you dream or think the tourist will come and pay money to stay in the ghost house, or they call it a cemetery of a neighborhood? So this is how in the year of 2005, after meeting Michael and Linford, and of course Dave and Eric, his friend, we were able to rent a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Arab mansion in the center of the old city of Nazareth, and we named it after the late owner, Fauzi Azar, who had only daughters. So when the daughters rented us the property, they told us we have 3 conditions. Condition number 1, you name it after our father, because he had no hair, so no one to continue his name. And condition number 2, you must keep it as a Palestinian house. No Star of David, no Israeli independence celebration. You keep it on our values and culture. And term number 3, because we understand you are a kibbutznik. A kibbutznik means in Israel or in Hebrew, someone that got a lot of chutzpah and ambition, but no money. So okay, we understand you are a kibbutznik and you have no money to pay us. So if you will agree to renovate every year, each year, in amount of $15,000 to renovate the property which was run down, and then in 5 years you will renovate in a sum equivalent to $75,000, we are willing to give you the key for 5 years. So that was in May 2005, just 5 months after coming back from traveling along the Pacific Crest Trail and South America. And of course, we took their offer, and it took us 4 days to do some minor renovation, cleaning, and then 4 days after, we opened the Fauzi Azar Inn, the first guest house ever in the old city of Nazareth.
That's amazing. I wonder, I presume that perhaps some of the people listening may have been there. And maybe others will
come again. So when we open now, there are more than 50 hospitality business in the old city of Nazareth, from high-end boutique hotel, really amazing and luxurious, to guest houses, hostels, and family stay. There are maybe 15 or 20 galleries, 5 coffee shops, cultural events, and we are already in the Lonely Planet guidebook or any travel magazine. Nazareth is considered as one of the best destination for foreigner travelers coming to visit the Holy Land. And it's something that we are privileged to be the pioneer and the first one to believe in the potential of the old city of Nazareth.
Okay, well, obviously your life has intersected with that of Palestinians at different points in different ways. I wonder if we can jump ahead then to October the 7th, when obviously your life changed drastically and tragically in the life of your family. And you've been tremendously gracious in sharing about that with so many people and so publicly and openly, something so tender and intimate, really. And I'm wondering if I can ask you to talk a bit about that very important day.
Sure, of course. October the 7th basically started the night before. It's a Sukkot holiday. It's a Jewish holiday of Sukkot, and it was the second eve. And my sister, who lives in Tel Aviv, invited the entire family for the holiday dinner. And unfortunately, my son, who I'm speaking from his room at the moment, wasn't feeling well, so we stayed at home. But my parents were there, and my 3 sisters who live in Israel, and the grandchildren, and my aunt and uncle, and then a beautiful night, eating, dancing, laughing. And around Tel Aviv is about 45 minutes drive from Netiv HaAsara, from where my parents live, on the Gaza border. So around just before midnight, the dinner and the evening ended, and my parents say good night to everyone. And my sister insists that they will sleep with her. It was late. My father, even my mom, though they were in the prime of their life, so active, so fit. And my father was 78 and my mom 76. So my sister insists they will come and they will sleep with her. But they said, of course, they said, no, we want to go home to sleep in our home. So around half past midnight, they arrived to Netiv HaAsara. And then on the October the 7th, Saturday, I wake up in Binyamina, where I live now. And I live for the last 18 years. Binyamina is a small town halfway between Tel Aviv and Haifa, about 10 kilometers from the sea, Mediterranean. So I woke up at 7:30 and still from bed, I'm checking my WhatsApp. And I see that my dad wrote that there are many sirens and shooting and alarm. They lock the house and they are inside the safe room. It sounds crazy, I know, but it's normal. It's normal. We get this message every few months or once a year. So I said, okay, it's another day, and one of those days that there is some security issues in the border. So I haven't done. I went making our morning coffee. Every morning I'm boiling machineta coffee for Shlomit. So I went down to make the coffee. And while the coffee was boiling, I checked the news like I'm doing every morning. So I saw there is a Hamas invasion to the neighboring community of the Israeli community. The neighboring communities is my community. And I never remember anything like this that happened before. So I called my dad. It was 7:40. I called him. I said, Dad, what's going on? And he's telling me, like I wrote you in the message, there are sirens and shooting and a lot of noise. I could hear my mom in the background. We locked the house and we're in the safe room. So I told him, okay, send my love to mom, to you, and be safe. I'll talk to you soon. And keep watching the news. I saw photos and clips of the wall falling apart, of Hamas invading the communities, of Hamas Toyota trucks in Sderot, which is like just where I was born. I said, wow, this is really crazy. Something big is happening. I must call my dad again. And it was 7:45, just 5 minutes after talking to him. So I'm calling him, and there is no answer. So I'm trying to call my mom, and there is no answer. So I'm calling my sisters, I'm calling my brother who lives in London, and we try to reach them and reach their neighbors. So we hope it's maybe a cellular reception that collapsed, or electricity failure, but we cannot reach no one. So we said, let's meet, let's group together. So at about 11 in the morning, we are grouping at my sister's house with all the 8 grown-up grandchildren from the age 12 to 19. And so we are meeting and we're sitting all days together, playing games and trying to reach my parents or their neighbors. And we start receiving names of victims, names that we know, of our friends, and trying to reach someone from their neighbors at the 5 in the afternoon. We were able to reach the security officer of the community, and we tell him we don't need a delegation, we don't need an official notice, we just want to know what's going on. And he's telling us that my parents' house is burned to ashes and there are 2 bodies inside. So again, we cried, group and crying, and we've deciding we're going to start the Shiva. It's the Jewish way of mourning. It's basically a work ceremony that goes day after day after day for 7 days. We're going to start it on Sunday morning, which happens to be the first Shiva of the war, because usually Shiva is starting after the funeral. But we knew our parents didn't want a funeral. They wanted their bodies to be burned, and that will scatter the ashes offered in the fields, the agriculture fields of Netiv Asara. And they told us many times, the land should be for trees, for wheat, for flowers, not for graves. So we started the first Shiva, and every morning we open just the siblings, the 5 of us. Then thousands of people came to pay their condolence, including survivors from Niram, survivors from Netiv Asara, and then newly bereaved family, because they didn't start at the Shiva because there were no funeral. They came to us to visit us. So it was very emotional and very, very powerful. And every night we sat together with our children, like the grandchildren of my parents. And I think it was the second morning of the Shiva that my brother said, again, my brother, I want from our personal tragedy and community tragedy to send a universal message. And I want our message to be not revenge. We are not calling for revenge for our murdered parents. We just want to end the cycle of blood, the cycle of war. And this is the message we start crying and shouting and speaking from that moment.
What would you want us to know? First of all, thank you for sharing that. And I, of course, want to acknowledge the great loss that you and your family have experienced. What would you want us to know about your parents?
They were loving, supporting parents to all of us, always proud of us. They were involved in all their grandchildren's life, from the baby who's just 1 year and he is living in London, till the eldest, Mai, who lives in Tel Aviv. They cared, and they were just really beautiful people, really beautiful people. And what we learned, they were the pillars of the community. This is why they stay there. We always ask them, not in relation with with Gaza and to security's issue. We just try to convince them to come and move closer to us, closer to their grandchildren. But my father was, for 2 terms on a voluntary basis, the chairman of the community. And everyone just asked for his advice and guidance. And my mom, like that group, many Mandala students that really built the community and strengthened the community. And she was going swimming every day with 3 friends from the community. And she was so much involved with so many other people's life that if it's children or youth that came to her studio to paint mandala or just be there, and if from the founders of the community, the elderly, that also were very connected to her. So and they had beautiful life. They really had a beautiful life. Yeah.
I wonder, obviously you've been on an intense journey since October the 7th, to say the least. Can you tell us some of the lessons you've learned since October the 7th?
Yeah. So as the Shiva ended, after a week of crying, suddenly my mind cleared and became very sharp. And I told myself, Maoz, you have a mission. And your mission is to convince yourself and to convince everyone else that the future is going to be a better future. The future is going to be a better future, like my father always told me. And since that moment on, I start speaking in hundreds of media channels and in meetings, one-on-one, webinars, public and private events. And I learned many lessons, most of them from Palestinian. And the support we received as a family from Palestinians within Israel, in the West Bank, and in the Arab world for our message was so powerful. And they gave us so much hope in human being. So it made us very, very strong. And I will also, in Israel, there are 120 parliament members. 120. The only parliament members who called us were Palestinians. The only one. And they called us and they told us, we are afraid to call you. if you will take our call or not. And we told them, our parents educated us to respect every person, every human being by his action, not by his color, not by his religion, not by his nationality, just by his action. And if you are believing in equality, in justice and peace, you are more than welcome to be with us in our hardest time ever. So we got a lot of support from Palestinians and Arabs, and of course from Israelis. And then because the tension and the security within Israel was so at risk, so our Palestinian friends from Nazareth were afraid to come. So we've done a wake ceremony in Nazareth for our murdered parents, and 100 people, 100 Palestinians came, paying their condolement. And I learned few lessons, two of them from a Palestinian peace activist named Hamza Awawde. And Hamza said in an interview he done with my brother at the CNN, where the host asked him, Hamza, where do you see hope? How do you see hope? And he told her, I don't see hope. I make hope. I create hope. Hope is an action. Hope is something you do. And since that moment on, I make hope, and I make it with others. There are so many individuals and organizations, Israelis and Palestinians, that make hope nowadays. Some of them started just from October the 7th, and some for many years. I will just name few organizations, but there are so many. Women Wage Peace, Women of the Sun, Standing Together, Combatant for Peace, Family Circle, Hand in Hand. It's a Jewish-Arab education system. And really so many, we won't have time. And they are doing an amazing job. And I'm visiting those communities. I speak to board, I speak to activists, and I'm telling them, you are making hope by working now together, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, Israelis and Palestinians, Jewish and Arab, you are building the future. So I'm making hope. This is a very fundamental lesson that I received. And the second lesson was also from Hamza. He said, I'm willing to forgive about the past. I'm willing to forgive about the present, but I'm not willing to forgive about the future. Not to myself, but to no one other. If we want to make the future a better future. And I was watching and listening to his words. And I told myself, I want to be a great person like Hamza. I want to be able to forgive. So I said, I'm forgiving. I'm forgiving Hamas. I'm forgiving the Israeli government. I reduce and erase all the anger that within me, and I'm just concentrating in building the future. And this is what we are doing now. We are building the future. And maybe the most fundamental lesson, which is also really difficult to understand, and it's also connecting to your next week presentation. We are talking about two different stories, two different narratives, the Palestinian and the Israeli, and those narratives split in the holy books with the different chosen son, Isaac and Ishmael. And then the story split, and they never match. They never coming together. They are worlds apart. They are both right. They are both true, and the gap is getting wider as we're getting closer to the present with the Israeli Jewish Zionist movement and the Palestinian national movement, and all the wars we've been waging on each other for nearly a century. So the past is different. The present is also different. It's totally different, and the gap is wider. October 7th is being looked totally differently between Israelis and Palestinians. The war in Gaza looks really different if you are an Israeli or Palestinian. So it's totally apart, but there is a miracle. It's a true miracle. We meet in the future. We see the same future. So many Israelis and Palestinians shared the same future, a future that is based on equality, based on justice, based on reconciliation, based on security for everyone, based on you shall not revenge. So now we need to project this future to our mind, to our souls, and to be able to model it. And this is also something we forgot here in the Middle East and maybe in the Western world, to use our political imagination to dream and believe in a better future. So this is where we are now. And now we are starting modeling it and building the steps and the roadmap to reach this future.
Thank you. Danny, I wonder maybe this would be a good time. Maoz, are you willing to take some questions from people who are watching?
Yes, definitely, I'm willing. First, thank you for listening. It's really thank you for listening. Before I will say another thing that also combined to those narratives. So because I'm being interviewed many times by pro-Palestine or pro-Israelis. And I tell them, you're right. It doesn't matter if it's pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian. Yes, you are right. But by being right and by choosing a side, you're just ensuring that the conflict will continue. Because polarizing the conflict and the situation, we ensure it will continue. So I'm begging you, I'm begging everyone, don't be right. Be human. Choose humanity. Support us. Support Israelis and Palestinian peace activists in building this shared future. And then not only you will be right, we'll make peace together. So it's possible.
Yeah, it is possible. Thank you. There are a number of questions. I'm not sure we'll get to all of them today, but one I think that might be a quick one. Maoz, would you be able to share a link in the comments to the to your guest house?
Yes, what I will share also a link to my Linktree account. So there you can find all my social media, and it's very easy to reach me all through social media, and many articles and interviews I've been doing in the last 4 months. So I'll share it now.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I think one question, I'm just going to start from the top, everyone. Thank you for putting your questions in the comments, and we'll do our best to get through them. But Lorna says she's concerned for the next generation and the impact of violence it's having on them. Can you speak to how young people in your family are coping? Are they feeling the same mission for peace?
Just like I'm sharing, I cannot do two things together.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's right. None of us can.
I put it in the private.
Okay. I will take care of that then. Thank you.
More than that, each one of us is handling with the tragedy and the loss differently, and it's very difficult. Someone told me recently, if my heart was like I felt a scratch in my heart was broken, and is still broken, and everyone is handling with differently, and the war is still going on, and the trauma is still ongoing. And I believe that one of the best cure for personal trauma, but also national trauma, is to create a meaning, to find a meaning for what we are doing. And what greater meaning can it be than peace? I believe peace is the answer for so many questions and so many wounds. So I choose peace. as a healing, um, as a cure.
Thank you. Yes. The next question I'll say, and I think you've definitely touched on these already, so as you feel led, but how in building the future are those with your passion and courage working to stop the war on Gaza? This question is from Joanna.
We, I like I said, it's we are doing what we can, but we cannot do enough.
Sure.
To stop the war, we must have international intervention. At the moment, we're receiving military aid from the US in amounts that we cannot imagine. 14 billion US dollar military aid. We're receiving military aid from countries like the UK, from Germany, and others. As long as we'll continue to receive this military aid without any conditions or terms, I'm afraid the voices the voices or the act we are doing here on the ground are not enough. We must put in international pressure over your congressmen, diplomatics, leaders, the same with Canada, to stop the war. We cannot do it by ourselves. When we do try to protest, we are being silenced and oppressed. It's so difficult. It's so difficult, and it's a tragedy that will cry for it for still so many years. And the tragedy will just be even in a larger, can be so much larger if we won't stop the war and if we won't choose the path of peace. And I believe that you can support in so many ways just by amplifying voices of peace. Israelis and Palestinians, amplify our voices, help us gain credibility within our own community. Reach out to us, support the organization that I named before, because we also under budget. Of course, the government is not budgeting us; they are against us and oppressing us. So, and invite us for events like this one. Not just me. If you're in your community, in your church, in your university, in schools, invite us to speak to you, and to share the message for peace, for equality, for reconciliation that is coming. And now we are building a plan. There is some movements and organizations and individuals that sitting together to model the future and to build the roadmap to reach there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's a few other questions, but I think that you just answered a really good one. A lot of people have asked, how do we, as congregations or churches, support you and peace efforts better? I think you just spoke to that really, really well. So we're coming here close to the end. Will, is there anything else you would like to say?
Well, if you don't have any more questions to throw in there, I think, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, yes.
I wonder if I could ask Sam Raymer from Mennonite Action, an organization that's been really leading the way in terms of harnessing energies among our communities in Canada and the US. So I asked Sam if he could say a bit about upcoming actions, ways that people can get involved.
Will, I also, first, again, thanks.
Yes,
and I want to use another 2 minutes to share another vision. Okay, if it's okay to share, and it's great. We are amazing on time to share another vision.
Yes,
please. We have 2 minutes.
Of course, go for it.
Two nights after the first one, it was 5 days, I think, after the murder of my parents. And again, I wake up at night. My entire body is in pain, and I'm crying. And I open my eyes, and I can see a star. I can see a star like I can see you now. And the star start talking to me. And he asked me, do you know who I am? I tell him no. He asked me, "Are you sure you don't know me?" I tell him, "No, I don't." And he's telling me, "I'm the Star of Peace." And I'm telling him, "So what's now? What do you mean?" He tell me, "I want to ask you to walk towards me, to follow me. Come to me." And I ask him, "Like walking?" He said, "Yes, come and start walking in my direction." And I ask him, "Shall I come by myself? Alone, walk alone?" And he's telling me, "You should start and the other will follow you." And since that night, I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to meet the Star of Peace. And last thing I want to say is that my mom painted thousands of mandala, and she gave me only one as a present, only one. And she wrote there, and then I will show you later how it's in Hebrew to the screen. She wrote there, "All our dreams can be fulfilled if we have the courage to chase them." And so my mom gave me the courage to dream, and I'm walking to the Star of Peace. And this is how it looks like. That's the mandala, and it's a huge, it's like 2 meters on 2 meters painting. So thank you for your time. I'm really also waiting to hear what Sam is going to say about actually what you're doing now, because I'm highly interested, and I would love to stay in touch. I need it, okay, as a support to stay in touch with you, with the entire Mennonite communities, and together we're going to make it happen.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So much. Okay, Sam, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. First, thank you, Maoz, for those powerful words and for your work and advocacy for justice, peace, and hope. It is truly inspiring. And thank you again, Will and Danielle, for putting this event together and allowing me to say a few brief words about Mennonite Action. Mennonite Action is a movement of Mennonites bonded by a common belief that we must be public about our peace values. We believe that Mennonites have a responsibility to use our voices as powerfully as possible for the cause of peace and justice. We strive to follow Christ's example in the way of peace, doing justice, and bring reconciliation in the face of violence and warfare. Over the past few months, we have been taking public action as Mennonites to demand a permanent ceasefire, as a way to protect millions of innocent people, and as the start of a journey towards lasting peace between Palestinians and Israelis. We are hosting a bi-national week of action during the week of March 25th, with the theme of Send Aid, Not Bombs. For these actions, we encourage groups to make physical symbols of aid, such as quilt squares, to deliver to their representatives. Here in Canada, we aim to host actions across the country, including in our capital, Ottawa. In collaboration with MCC Ontario office in Kitchener, we will be sending buses from the Waterloo region to Ottawa on March 21st to take public action on Parliament Hill and demand that our federal representatives end arm exports and work for a political solution that honors the lives of both Palestinians and Israelis. Join us at our website, MennoniteAction.org, to learn more about our future events and our actions. Our table is wide, and all those who strive for peace are welcome. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Sam. I would add
This is
very
a great
briefly that
initiative. This is really a great initiative. So I would also love to get some information and to share it with the peace activists here on the ground and to see if we can support it, because this is exactly what needs to be done. So thank you.
I'll add very briefly that there is very likely going to be a delegation of people from Canada, it could be the US, headed to the Christ at the Checkpoint conference put on by Bethlehem Bible College in May. So if there are people who are interested in supporting or participating in something like that, you could get in touch with the Mennonite Church Canada Palestine Israel Network or myself or whoever. And I don't know, maybe if this delegation happens, I don't know if there's perhaps going to be a walking with Maoz on the Jesus Trail that might just be part of that itinerary. Who knows? So thanks to all of you for listening, for participating, for opening your hearts. And thanks, Maoz. You have shared much of your heart with us, of your vision. You've shared deeply. We're grateful to you for that. And we ask for God's blessing on you, on your family, on your work, your community. Thanks to all. Go in peace.